Daniel Mumby is that startup guy. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking with him all the way from Melbourne, Australia, talking a lot about what he does as an entrepreneur, how to be a crazy entrepreneur, as if we aren't all crazy enough, looking at problems worth solving, how to actually make an impact. And he's come up with this amazing concept called minimum lovable products, your new MLP. You've probably heard of MVP, right? Minimum viable product. But Daniel takes us on a journey in terms of explaining what is really important to get the product love across and how that's going to make a difference in your business, whether it's offline or online. So join me for the upcoming episode with Daniel Mumby, coming up soon.
Overwhelmed with online or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all of the self-appointed gurus, big buzzwords and empty promises? The Breaking Digital podcast by Doyle Bueller tells you exactly what smart entrepreneurs need to know to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. It's about digital leadership and delivering the best value for your business online to your audience. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital leadership and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Bueller.
So welcome, Daniel. How are things today?
Hi, Doyle. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, fantastic that you could join us all the way from Melbourne.
And you pronounced that perfectly too.
It's taken me years.
Said like a true Aussie.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about yourself, Daniel. What do you do?
So I'm known in the industry as that startup guy. I'm a bit of I suppose you'd call me a crazy entrepreneur. I think I've done about 15 ventures, including 4 not-for-profits. Every one of the others has been in completely different spaces. So I'm a mentor, advisor, launching an accelerator business with a venture capital arm attached, angel investor. I suppose you'd call me a venture catalyst. I'm really interested in helping people to turn good ideas into great companies and create great value.
So you mentioned crazy entrepreneurs. Why did you say that?
Well, I think you've got to be a little bit to be in this space. I mean, I'll take a step back for a second. So when I was 15, I suppose you'd call me a whiz kid. I could code in 5 languages before, I can't speak any other language, but I could code in 5 languages. With a few gaps in my history around that, I've discovered that coding is an entrepreneurship, but it is a path to entrepreneurship. And I think in my life, I probably had about 400 really good ideas, probably evaluated
400.
about 50,
Wow.
yeah, probably 400, probably evaluated really 50 or 60 good ones, and then ended up building about 15. So, I think you've got to be a little bit crazy to be a little bit like that.
So what constitutes a good idea versus a bad idea?
Well, I always like the concept of building for a compelling need to solve a problem, and I like I think Einstein said, it might have been in 1942, that if you had an hour to solve a problem, you should spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem. And the challenge or the difficulty with many entrepreneurs is they spend a lot of their time coming up with focusing on the solution or coming up with the answer, and then go, I've got the answer. What was the question? And so I like building applications or solving problems that have a real need in the real world. It's not about creating an app that goes ho or yo or something like that. It's actually about saying, what is it that people have pain around? You might call it a tier 1 problem, and then focusing on the problem in order to build a solution that's valid and real and relevant for that audience.
So is that just to sort of cut out all the bad ideas then, like spending 55 minutes? And I know that's just obviously a literal, not a literal, figurative type analysis, but what do you think?
Oh no, I actually think it's quite literal. I think that so many people spend so much time focusing on the solution, but they actually don't understand the problem enough. And so typically that's one of the reasons why I like working with experienced professionals, because typically they have a lot of deep domain knowledge around the audience or the market or the problem or what have you. So instead of coming up with the answer, they typically have a lot of deep understanding around the problem itself. Because I think we never get enough the concept of minimum viable product is a really challenging one for me, because I think the concept of MVP doesn't give you necessarily deep insight around the needs and motivations of the audience. I am a little old school when it comes to marketing. I don't think there's a wrong thing with that. I'm pretty good as an adopter of methodology and technology, but there are just some things that won't work to solve deep problems. E-commerce is pretty easy to run an MVP around and you can test it. But if you're trying to solve a problem that's, rooted around deep science or deep technology or hard engineering, I don't think you can use MVP sort of technology to do that. It takes deep domain knowledge. Does that make some sort of sense, Dawn?
Yeah, no, it does. So, I mean, what you're saying is that you need to be able to analyze the problem before you even jump into a possible solution, just to make sure it's a good enough problem worth solving.
Absolutely, and there are a couple of fundamentals too. I mean, if the problem is worth solving, I mean that'll become obvious in itself. And then there are some questions that you start asking around the audience and the market. That does the audience care about this problem? Do they have the capacity to pay? Can I reach them? Why would they value this offering? And MVPs don't give you that, and I think deep domain knowledge does, or at least gives you the insights into the questions you need to be asking before you're building a product or a solution, before you're even going for a problem solution fit, or way before product market fit, you actually should be understanding more about the problem. And that's the Einstein quote.
Yeah, but that seems to sort of be counter to how most businesses are taught to sort of start a business. It's you create that MVP and then you sort of test the market and that sort of thing. So you're saying take a step back, find more problems with the pain, and then kind of look at developing a solution.
Absolutely, and I don't think it's a significant extra work. So the general dichotomy of the two main streams of methodology of building a business are the 50-page business plan or the information memorandum, and they don't work. And then the MVP. Now, I'm not saying MVP doesn't work as a methodology of the lean startup, the business model canvas. And we probably put some links to some of this stuff on the landing page if people don't know what I mean by the terminology. But the other school of thought is the minimum viable product. And the problem with MVP, especially around hard problems to solve, and especially for experienced professionals, is that MVP doesn't work. So I think there's a different and alternative methodology for certain audiences that will work better, especially around the business to business and business to enterprise stuff. I mean, if you've got a product offering that there's only 10 customers for in the world, but they might each spend $10 or $100 million with you, then the last thing you want to do is use an MVP and alienate half of your audience. So I love the term or the concept of minimum lovable product. And there's some really good articles out there about the difference between the two. Minimum lovable product actually means that by the time you put it in your customer's hands, they usually say to you 3 words. So let me give you a quick analogy of that. And typically an MVP an MLP, a minimum lovable product, has more work that you do at the beginning. But when you put it in the hands of the customer, they tell you usually things like, that's really cool, or I love this. Now, the reason why that's really important is in an MVP, what you don't get is virality or stickiness or the capacity to or churn or the metrics that matter or the capacity for customers to recommend and refer. But when you create an MLP, what you get is all of that and more. So it actually does tell you about the viability of the business as opposed to the potential viability of the product. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so keen on people to say, spend more time understanding the problem that you're solving, and then the ultimate solution that you ultimately build will be the one that customers love, but you'll do that sooner, which means that your business will grow faster.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So is there like a timeline that you recommend, or is there sort of, how do you sort of start to get going down that path?
Well, I mean, there's no MLP is so early or new in the talk around the ecosystem that I don't think there's any hard metrics around somebody that's done something via using an MLP versus an MVP. But from what I can see, it looks like you're front loading the work by an extra 3 or 6 months, just ballpark sort of figures from what I've been able to ascertain in conversation. But then what you're effectively doing by the time you're getting to launch, after you've talked to your frontier audience, is that you're getting significantly better metrics and significantly better growth, because you're putting something in the hands of people not only that they love and want to use and want to pay for, but they also want to share and talk about and tell people about. And you get there quicker, ultimately.
So add some time to develop that at the beginning.
Add some time at the beginning and some understanding and some insight, more questioning, more circling around the problem, more asking, understanding what the pains of your audience and your market are.
Yeah, because in the startup ecosystems, like I said earlier, we see so much pressure to just sort of get the product out there, get it going, and we got to do this fast, or fail. What did they say? Fail
fast.
Fail fast.
But failure's painful and expensive. Why not? And then so it's fail fast, and then all these organisations who end up pivoting. And I don't think you need to pivot if you're building a minimum lovable product, because what you're doing is you're constantly course correcting. And the problem of pivot, if you think about it in a physical sense, you're pivoting because you're stopped. You can't pivot in movement, so you're pivoting on a fixed point in time space. Whereas course correcting is something that happens when you're heading to your destination, and the destination is still the same spot, but environmental or varying factors affect your direction. So wind speed, course, that sort of thing. If you've got to stop to pivot, you've lost all your momentum. And if you think about the analogy of a ship, you can't pivot in a ship. You don't stop to change course and then go, now point it in the next direction and then go on.
Well, you can,
just course
but
correct.
like as you said, it takes a lot of energy to do that.
It does. It takes a lot of energy to stop and a lot of energy to start off again. Yeah. And why would you do that? Why wouldn't you get a better understanding of where the target is and then map out your route a little bit better and then course correct as you go, which negates the need for pivoting, which negates the need for stopping. Yeah. Because if you're focused on the problem as opposed to the methodology of how you get there, oh my God, the vehicle doesn't work. Well, let's stop and we'll change vehicles. Or let's just change vehicles along the way, as opposed to, the destination's wrong. I'm not going to Sydney anymore. I'm going to change and suddenly turn around and head to Perth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we spend too much time focusing on, my solution's not working. Well, no, of course your solution's not working because you didn't understand the problem that customers had enough, or potential customers.
Yeah, no, for sure. So what does that mean though, in terms of, the F word, the failure, or a failed business or a failed idea? Like from your philosophy, it sounds fantastic, but can you sort of push it too far, so that there is no success? It is just a failure. And when should you say, well, look, it's just not going to work?
Look, I absolutely believe that failure is important. And in fact, I'm the king of failure. I failed more times at most things than most people will ever even imagine, including, personal relationships and marriages and things like that. I'm absolutely the thing. I might save a couple of snippets that I might have inserted here, but I might save them till a little bit later talking about failure. But failure is an important part of the process, but it's not actually the avoidance of failure that's important. I think it's about setting some go, no-go points along on your journey, because what you may discover as you're mapping out your path to your audience and your path to success is that you may learn that you actually can't get to success from where you are with what you've got. And so by building in some go, no-go points into that journey, you're actually saying, you know what, no, we can't do this. So rather than stay the course, if you will, on an idea that ultimately is, you're just too much at risk or too much if failure comes along, I think the opportunity to exit out and go, yep, I'm going to keep my powder dry for the next bit or the next venture or the thing, because you don't lose the learning that you get from the process of the venture. The learning stays with you. What you lose is the capacity to do the next venture. So if you
lose that end product, really.
Exactly. Or you can lose credibility, or you launch and fail, and suddenly, you went all in. Now, I love a game of poker. A lot of people do. If you go all in, you better be prepared to lose your stake. And I think the problem is that unless you've got a really good chance of winning the hand, or you're a really good bluffer, I don't like the concept of going all in.
So are entrepreneurs gamblers then?
Oh, well, risk takers, but I don't think it's unmitigated. I think the more you do this and the better you go. It's actually it's about recognizing the risk and identifying it, and preparing for in advance, so that I don't like A/B testing. I like A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing, because you don't know necessarily which one's going to stick. And this is, you hear a lot of conversation around startups, focus, focus, focus. But how do you know at the beginning what's the thing that's really going to work? What's the thing that really significantly matters? So if you're focused on, one thing, you might actually be missing the thing that you're really supposed to be doing or learning. So I like the concept of push, is where you're wide across a very strong battlefront, and I like the occasional war analogy. But then you're testing and probing across the front line for the weakness, and where you break through might not be where you expect.
Yeah. So that would sort of imply then that you need, being a solopreneur is great, but you really sort of need somebody or some group or people or whatever to kind of help you point out those weak spots potentially.
Absolutely. So it starts, every great thing that we see in the physical world, apart from that which is in the natural universe, every piece of hardware or technology or mechanism, everything on your desk that you see, started as a good idea from somebody with a glint in their eye and the fire in their belly. But they weren't the person that naturally delivered on the whole project. They were the person that was the inceptor of solving a particular problem. And then they used their energy, vision, what have you, to attract the team towards them. So it starts with a person. And that's my ethos for investing, is that I invest in people. I don't invest in technologies or business models or teams or what have you. I invest in founders, because founders are the ones that can actually build great ventures. But everything we see in the physical universe at some point was just an idea. And then they were able to attract to them the resources that they need in order to build and succeed in that thing, whatever it is.
So you wouldn't really, if you were asked to support somebody, a solopreneur, you'd say, well, get a team first. Is that correct? Or?
No, no, I like investing in solopreneurs, but I also like to think that they've actually got to be the sort of person that can attract other people to them. I almost never invest in individuals by themselves, simply because I realize that in order for that idea to become successful, it's going to take way more than the one person, and they don't have everything it takes in order to succeed. I don't have everything it takes to succeed. So I've got this wonderful co-founder who is brilliant at everything that I suck at. And there are quite a many things
that's what a team is for.
But I'm really cognizant of the level of maturity and teachability that for people to be able to look at themselves and say, you know what, I'm not good at that, and I'm good at this. So I'm going to work with other people who are really good at the things that I'm bad at, or I'm going to insource it or outsource it or hire it or bring it in some way, shape or form, so that I'm focusing on the stuff that I'm good at, and the stuff that I'm bad at is the other people in the team are really good at that. And it takes a certain sort of person to be able to attract or to speak in a way that message resonates with others. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's fascinating analysis there, Daniel. You're also pretty big on sort of the personal branding side of things. You have your own moniker, that startup guy. How can you tell me a bit more about how you've been growing your own personal brand?
Well, it sort of started from the fact that I'd had a 20-year corporate career before I moved into the startup world. Really recognizing that I was an entrepreneur in about 2004. So you can do the math on that. I'll tell you, I'll save you doing the math. I'm 49. I've been I feel like I've just finished my apprenticip at this late age. I'm really
always thinking young.
Well, absolutely. I'm still using the same eyes as are you, that at 49 that I had when I was 20. I just maybe see things slightly differently than I did way back then. So unless I look in the mirror, I don't feel any different than when I did when I was 20. I certainly know that I know a lot more. But one of the things that having had a long career, everybody gets my surname wrong. It's every government department has never spelled it right on any form. So I just thought, well, firstly, let's solve that problem. I am my own brand. I am that guy. I've always been that guy. It just took me a few years to figure it out. So I thought, well, why not make it easy for other people to recognize who I am not who I'm not. Gary Vaynerchuk is a great example of this. He's Gary V.
Yeah.
You know who he is. You don't have to say his last name. He's sort of figured it out as well. Brad Feld, that's a little easier. You can't mess that up too much. I just wanted to find a way to differentiate myself as a guy who's focused and interested in startups than somebody who is a consultant or a mentor or an advisor or someone who's just a service provider.
But the difference is that you've sort of, this was quite intriguing from what I've seen, is that you're sort of not focusing on a traditional startup per se, but more of sort of a more mature type of audience, those types of businesses or those types of entrepreneurs.
I wanted to, I looked, and again, this was coming back to my ethos about circling around the problem for a long time, is I thought about who I could help and how I could best help them. And I was looking at the problem of experienced professionals, which I was then. And I had been trying to solve the problem of why was it, I think from 2013, where I had this particularly good startup and at a hackathon in one weekend, I'd built together a team of 7 and the ideal team, and we had a minimum viable product, and we had a prototype that was working, and it was a social media language translator that worked in real time. So you would tweet in English, and then somebody else in another country, say, would read it in their language, whatever was on their device, and then they would reply, and then that would come back to you in real time. As it turned out, I thought that the path that the success of that was to get into an accelerator, because it was would have required about $100 million in venture finance. It was artificial intelligence, machine learning. Now, as it turns out, that wasn't the problem I was interested in solving. But what I discovered along the way was that we couldn't get into a single accelerator in Australia. And that was the path to venture finance for a technology business. What I discovered was the real problem I was trying to solve was why is it that people with all of this expertise and credibility and skills aren't getting into accelerators and aren't building great ventures? But if they are, once they get into motion, they're actually a couple of times more likely to succeed. I end up doing some research on it. So the problem I discovered that I was really solving, that I'd been circling around all my life, was in fact the challenge of experienced professionals to become great entrepreneurs, because of the challenges they've got, not despite them. So the challenges around spouse, kids and mortgage, around career, reputation and credibility and risk and those sorts of things, the fact that they've got more to lose. The fact that they've got more to lose means they also have more to gain. And
I was just going to say that. It's like, well, they have a lot more to gain, and they have that experience that says, hey, I'm not going to make sort of those silly mistakes that the ordinary startup, from a hackathon would. Not to say that wouldn't be a good idea, but...
Absolutely, but they can't afford to fail, so they're going to have to think better and smarter and faster and quicker and think on their feet and attract more people to them. So, and typically they've got risks around, say, spouse, kids and mortgage or career reputation, so they've got more to lose.
So
they can't afford to fail.
Yeah, no, for sure, but they want, it's not a matter of wanting to fail, it's just a matter of wanting to succeed. But do they sort of have one foot in the pool kind of thing and one foot on the outside waiting to go in, or do they dive in and say, let's get this job done?
I think this is the risk mitigation play that I needed to figure out, and this is part of my challenge and my opportunity was, so they're hidden and they're hard to reach for that sort of reason. They're, as you say, 1 foot in the pool, 1 foot out. They're not all in, jump boots and all, because they can't be, because they've got responsibilities and obligations. But at the same time, they've got a whole lot more in their portfolio, what I call success factors, that once they're in play, they are significantly more likely to succeed. So around credibility, around track record, around expertise. And so some people might remember what a Rolodex is, and they've maybe got a little bit of seed capital. And I realised that because I'd spent my whole life figuring out how to solve those problems, that was the audience that I could help. So that's where I decided to focus my energy. I did some research on this through the Kaufman Foundation, and I found that once that group starts to build a venture, they're actually 2 to 4 times more likely to succeed, but most never start. So the problem I'm circling around my entire life is to help them mitigate their risks so that they could and will build successful great ventures.
Yeah, well, because I was going to ask, like, is there a sense of regret in that audience to say, well, I'm 40 or I'm 30 and, I'm tired of doing the corporate thing. I wanted to start a business 20 years ago. I'm just going to bloody well do it.
You're spot on. At a certain point in time, for all what I call great entrepreneurs, and I'm not talking about people who just feel like it'd be nice or it's cool or what have you, there is a certain sense which happens in many of us where the alarm goes off. There's a sense of a time of the clock is ticking, and maybe more time has passed than I might have wanted, and I haven't got where I imagined I wanted to get to. And this is going to resonate with a couple of people in your audience as they listen, and they become acutely aware that maybe there's less time ahead of them than there is behind them, and wondering why haven't they yet succeeded, even though in their 20s they imagined that they were going to achieve this thing. My view, the game isn't done yet. You've still got time, and the fact that you've become acutely aware of it is part of the process.
Yeah. So will we see more, 60, 70, 80-year-old entrepreneurs that want to make a difference?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about 60. It absolutely can be, but I think the opportunity for the people who are in their 30s and the 40s who feel like the technological age might have passed them by, oh my heavens, I think they're the ones that are actually going to succeed. If you look at the founders of WhatsApp as a good example of that, I think when they launched their offering, they were in their late 30s, early 40s, 39 and 40 respectively. That's when they launched. And, they didn't sell out until I think they were 43 and 44 respectively.
Yeah.
And sold to, what was it, 19 billion to Facebook? I
Yeah,
mean, they're a
something
good
like that.
example of people that they'd had years and years and years in their space before they launched an offering. I think they'd been doing some stuff around SMS technology prior to that. They're good examples of what it takes to succeed. They knew their space, they backed themselves, they had a track record, and they knew the pain and problem of their audience. And then they built.
No, for sure. And that's sort of where we've seen where these overnight successes are really not overnight at the end of the day, right? They take
20 years,
decades.
What is the old phrase? 20 years to become an overnight success?
Yeah, at least. But I guess that's a good thing too, because people are sort of, the entrepreneurs are sort of toiling away in the background. Yeah, they might be a hackathon, a great idea, but it takes them that time to actually build up that experience and build up that opportunity and solve that problem. And maybe that comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, yeah, you got to spend 55 minutes on sort of discovering the problem and then 5 minutes on solving it.
Indeed. And that's what I think I really had done for the last 5 years full time, was really been circling around the problems of the previous 10 years of experiences as that I'd had in terms of creating ventures. In fact, my first venture was as an entrepreneur in '96, which I then exited out of in 2000. So I'd really been doing this thing for 20 years and trying to figure out what it was that I was trying to solve. And I was a whiz kid at one point, but you don't stay that forever. And most entrepreneurs don't succeed in their first venture, contrary to what you might see in the popular press. Only 1 in 1,000 ventures gets funded, and only 1 in 1,000 of those that gets funded goes on to have significant success. For most great entrepreneurs, it takes between 8 and 14 ventures to succeed. So once you know that that's the reality, then you can design for that. I always like to think about the end game and reverse engineer back. That to me makes much more sense than to cast off blindly into the unknown.
Yeah, true. So you're tempering that risk with sort of knowledge and experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then also knowing when to get out, and if it's not in this venture, but the learning that you got from whatever it is that you're trying to solve never leaves you. In fact, you build upon it. So you might start venture number 6 and you bring together the team from venture number 4 and the learnings that you had from the e-commerce play from venture number 5 and the mentors' eyes that you got from the first couple of ventures, and suddenly venture number 7 starts to look really interesting because you've built the team and the credibility and the track record, and you haven't made stupid mistakes because you've mapped out the journey a little bit better. Maybe not the exact signposts, but you know what your roadmap is, you know what your waypoints are, you know where to stop and get petrol and fill up and sleep and refuel and change course. And, oops, I've hit a detour, know how to handle that when I hit a detour, as opposed to the first time around when you hit a detour, sometimes you crash and burn
You
in a
have no
flaming
idea.
heap.
Get lost forever.
You've never done that, have you, Dora?
You found yourself on a different continent.
Oops.
I knew I should have turned left.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
indeed. What was that
fascinating. So,
Talking Head song? What was it? The Talking Head song. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here?
yeah, true. Well, no, it sounds really cool because it's sort of that you're tapping into sort of that mature person who sort of understands the complications and understands the risks and understands the problems and the pain and can actually probably make a better go of it.
I think so. Well, as I said, there was some research done by the Kaufman Foundation says they're 2 to 4 times more likely to succeed if they start. And that's the critical bit that I was trying to figure out. And that's the thing that it's really taken me about 2.5 years to figure out with that audience. I can't reach them because they're invisible. It's not like they can put on their LinkedIn, oh, hey, I'm quitting my company job in the next 2 years and doing something wonderful, but I don't know what that is. So they are invisible. But they do have real risks that need to be mitigated. But so I'm really, really interested in what that effectively is, the parallel ecosystem. What that group of people, however large or small they might be, what value they can create in adding to our ecosystem rather than replacing it. Because I think if you start matching up people that have got really, really great domain knowledge and then matching them up with maybe younger graduates or technical people who've got great understanding of how to actually deliver and use technology as a service delivery mechanism, I think then you start to really get some interesting plays coming along. And that's what I'm really, really keen to see, is a collaborative ecosystem rather than a scarcity or an abundance mentality or a dog-eat-dog mentality.
Yeah, so, we need more of the abundance mentality.
Yeah. We don't seem to have enough of that yet. And by the way, that extends all the way through up into investment in ventures. I'm really keen and bullish on the concept of getting organisations to co-invest with us and to share in a slice of the pie, and to do that in a fair and open and honest and transparent way. I'm not a fan of the scarcity mentality where in order for me to have more, you must have less. I like the concept of making the pie bigger and baking more pies.
Yeah, exactly. There's enough pie for everybody.
There is, and in fact, we can make more pies. We've got the capacity. Nobody should have to go hungry in either a metaphorical or in a physical sense.
Yeah,
because we actually have the ability to solve those problems.
Yeah,
we just haven't applied it.
Yeah, no, brilliant stuff. And you mentioned before as well that you've sort of you've taken sort of Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and sort of rearranged it. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs see the concept of Shark Tank as being the way that you build a business and raise capital. And having been at this a few times, and I think I've thrown my phone at the television a couple of times as I've seen a couple of episodes. The problem is that what people see on Shark Tank is entertainment. It's not how you build real businesses.
Yeah.
So it gives those aspiring entrepreneurs who know no different a false sense of what it really takes to succeed. And so I got so frustrated with that I said, well, you know what? If you can't beat them, join them. And I thought, well, I want to see content that I can learn from and that I want to watch and that's going to inspire me and inform me and help me get closer where I'm trying to get to. I didn't see anyone else making it, so I decided to create my own. So we've actually already started producing the first of 5 different series. The first one's called Dinner with Investors, and I was interested in talking with other investors, as we often do, about what is it that we're looking for in great founders and what do we think and what are we interested in and what have we learned from our journeys. And I realised that there's so many different types of investors, probably about 30 different types of investors, and they all have different perspectives and opinions. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool to get them across the room and talk about, as we do in dinner, and film that and share that with so that founders and other investors could get a better sense of what it actually, what is it from other people's perspective? What are they looking for? What interests them? What have they learned? What value can they share? So yeah, we've got that coming out as a series. We've already shot the first 2 pilots, and that's been really, really well received.
Oh, excellent.
By the time this goes to air, we might even have the series out. So.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Probably
sounds
you can
brilliant.
put a link to it on the landing page if that's okay with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we'll get to that coming up shortly. And so, just to sort of wrap up, have been having a fantastic conversation with you, Daniel. But you also have sort of a philosophy of how to basically get shit done, right? What do you live by to get to do stuff that's important?
Well, after 15 ventures, and I think Startup Foundation is probably going to be my last one, but it's effectively 4 or 5 ventures in one. But there's some things that I've learned along the way, and I call them my laws of startup success, and I have 42 of them. Why 42? I think that's the answer to life, the universe, and the meaning of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an old joke, but it's our generation.
It is. If anybody doesn't know what that is, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the answer. There's the reason why why it's 42.
Yeah, but then you're
And
too young to start a business, though, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
But so the reason I won't give you all 42, but I will give you the 3 that matter because I think they're really important. And if you get these 3 about right, then you eventually, even if you fail at every venture you're going to do, you'll end up failing at failing, and therefore succeed. Because if you follow the first 3 of these laws really well, you can't not succeed before you die. Or you die. There's only 2 choices. You will ultimately fail at failing, or you will die. And I could you imagine not, spending the rest of your life not trying to do the thing that you were supposed to do?
Yeah.
Even if you didn't get there. So let me give you the three laws, and they're not rules because rules must be broken by entrepreneurs, but they're laws. Yeah. So law number 1: always enjoy what you do. And by the way, if you're not enjoying it, go and do something else, or make it fun, because if you're going to spend the next 5 to 7 years or 10 years doing and succeeding at this thing, shouldn't you enjoy it? Shouldn't it be fun? Shouldn't you make it fun? Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? The second law: never bet more than you can afford to lose. And this is coming back to my poker analogy from before about going all in. If you go all in, then you better be prepared to lose your stake. That's just the way you play. So having your go no go points is really important. And the third thing, and this is key critical to tying up these other 2, is figure out how to stay in the game between ventures. And this startup that you're doing now, and I'm talking to your audience here, might fail. But if you figured out how to stay in the game between ventures, and if it doesn't work, and if you exit out without betting more than you can afford to lose, and you've had fun along the way doing it, probably means you've learned some stuff, then maybe you have to go back to corporate land for a year or 2 or 5 to refill the coffers, or maybe get some additional sources of income coming in. But you've figured out how to stay in the game between ventures, because if it's not this one, it'll be the next one, or the one after that, or the one after that.
Right.
So you follow my 3 laws, eventually you're a winner.
Don't give up.
Well, it isn't even just you don't give up, but it's actually about having a plan about not giving up and saying, I may not succeed here, but I'm certainly going to learn from it, and I'm certainly going to have the capacity to play. And I haven't bet my relationships, I haven't borrowed on my mortgage, I haven't drawn down on credit cards or done stupid things that keep me out of the game for the next one. Because what if I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I go, I've got the answer, now I know what the thing is I'm supposed to do, but just smack bang in the middle of a bankruptcy.
Yeah. Yeah. So use risk wisely, but use your intelligence and sort of your wisdom and experience on top of that.
Risk is your friend. Risk is the thing that will get you greater reward.
Well, you couldn't do anything if you didn't risk something, right?
That's right. But it's the measured and moderated and considered risks, and the overcoming of those risks that are where we succeed. And that's why most people don't have the capacity to do that, because they don't keep playing long enough to learn what the rules of the game are.
They just kind of get in and, it's not working, I got to get out, I got to get a job.
That's it. And I'm really keen to share. I don't have a 158 formula for success. I think there are only 2. I mean, there are a lot of things that matter, but there's really only a 2-step scenario for success. And do you mind if I share this with you? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So there's an ancient Chinese philosopher called Lao Tzu, who said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And in fact, it's that first step which is the first of 2 steps to success. It's actually the very first step. It's making that first step. And the second step is actually equally simple. And this is the only other thing that you need to do to succeed. And it's actually quite simple. It's whatever else it takes.
Do whatever else it takes.
Do whatever else it takes. It's a very, very simple philosophy is I don't know what it will take to succeed, but if I'm prepared to do whatever else it takes, and let me add in there, with ethics, with integrity, according to, not against your values, that's really, really important. I don't know for a moment that you should beg, borrow, or steal in the literal sense of the word, although you should from a creative resourcing point of view. But whatever it takes means within the concept of the frame of ethics and laws and according to your values and standards.
Yeah.
So,
that's brilliant stuff.
It's not a means to an end is not a good end in itself.
Yeah. And so understanding the expectations.
Yeah. So it's not rocket surgery. Yeah, rocket surgery's hard.
Hey, that's my line.
True. Well, yeah. I mean, anyone can do brain surgery, but rocket surgery.
Yeah, rocket surgery. That's another thing. So, no, well, awesome, exactly. Excellent, Daniel. I really appreciate the time you spent discussing all these brilliant ideas and how to put them in place as well. So, thank you for that. How can we find you online? Where's your best location?
Well, LinkedIn's my thing, and I've been using that as a vehicle or a mechanism to test whether my audience was interested in what I was writing and speaking about, and in the last 12 months, that's certainly been demonstrated. So I don't know. I think in the last, I think I went from 1,000 followers to about 53,000 followers in the space of 12 months of using LinkedIn as my vehicle of choice. I don't even know where it's at the moment.
And LinkedIn hasn't shut you down on that?
Oh no! In fact, if anything, they've encouraged, inspired. Although there is a conversation to be had about if you want to build an offering, then you better have an audience to sell it to.
Yeah.
But you also should understand the difference between earned, owned, and leased eyeballs.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a conversation for another day. Or we might have that one over a couple of sherbets.
Yeah, exactly.
For your audience that's overseas that don't know what sherbet is, that's an Australian term for alcoholic beverage served in a glass at room temperature.
Oh, okay. Well, even I didn't know that
one. Okay.
Awesome.
But I think there's LinkedIn is my thing because it's a place that I can engage and connect and share and collaborate. But I think you do have to take your eyeballs off of LinkedIn or off of Twitter or off of Facebook and then move them to your own tribe. I think that's an important one. But it's a good place to start. It's a good way that we can connect and share and collaborate, and you can see some of the stuff that I've, some of the things that I've learned, and I'm more than happy to share and engage with any aspiring entrepreneur out there, especially the ones that see real and compelling problems. I like real stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. No, that's awesome. And for all the listeners, we'll be out, all the links will be on the website as well, thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. So you'll be able to connect directly with Daniel Mumby, all the way from Melbourne.
That's cool. And you mind, Doyle, if I think I've got a couple of books coming out and some things. So can we do a couple of special offers on the landing page? We won't
Absolutely.
Go into it now, but I'm sure. Can we negotiate that later and do a couple of deals
for sure.
For the audience?
Yeah, happy to get your stuff out there too. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate your time. And let's continue this conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me as part of the show, Doyle. Let me ask a final question of you. At the beginning, I said I was a crazy entrepreneur. Now, would you agree that is the case?
Oh, well, I was going to say all entrepreneurs are crazy. just a little bit, a little grade of crazy. So from 1 to 100, I would say you're like probably in the 80% crazy range.
Yeah. I think you've got to straddle the line a bit. But I got to say, thanks.
It's a good crazy,
much, by the way.
Sorry?
It is, and I hope we're appealing to a few other crazy people out there. By the way, thank you for having invited me onto the show. I love talking to audiences, and I hope that they get just a little value out of that. And I'm looking forward to subscribing to the rest of the series.
Masterful. Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doyle.
Take care. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much for listening to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. If you have any comments on the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter @Doyle Buehler with the hashtag #OwnOnline. I would really appreciate it if you could share this podcast with your network, as I'm sure they will get some value from it for building their successful business online as well. You can find the resources that we talked about, as well as the transcript and full podcast for download on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast or on iTunes or on SoundCloud. I'm Doyle Bueller, and I will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Digital with Doyle Bueller. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all of the notes, links, and details on this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion, How to Overcome the Misguidance and Misinformation Online, just send an email to doyle@thedigitaldelusion.com. See you online.